we've pitched this as a fireside chat, so I do hope everybody has a chance to sit down with a coffee, a croissant maybe, and we'd love to get any questions from you through the course of this chat. So just briefly, for my own part, I've been working in the EdTech space for years, companies like Apple, Oracle, Blackboard, on and on, most recently consulting to educations and EdTechs, working on projects as diverse as migration projects with Arizona State, University of Pittsburgh, work in South America, and more recently helping EdTechs here in Australia scale up the sorts of tools and solutions that really fit to the needs, particularly in a post-COVID world. And I am in my fifth week now with D2L as the regional leader here. Got a great team working with them, and I am delighted to have Trish McCluskey with me. Trish, over to you.
Okay, they really threw you in the deep end, didn't they, Tony? Nothing like a good start like that. Hi everyone, and kia ora to colleagues who are joining from New Zealand as well. My name's Trish McCluskey, and I'm currently the interim pro vice-chancellor learning and teaching at Victoria University. And I'm also director of connected learning, and connected being one of the key words that we use at VU in terms of digital technology and connecting to our communities and to our students. I've worked right across the whole spectrum of tertiary education, both in New Zealand and Australia. And I've been a lecturer, a teacher, a manager, a leader, a chair of academic board, a member of council. So I've got a pretty good overview of universities and how they work from bottom to the top. So I've been at VU now for 3 years, and I was part of the team who instigated the block model, which is one of our transformational strategies that we've been working on for the last almost 3 years now, and hopefully we'll get a chance to talk more about today.
Oh, thank you. And Charlotte, just if you can help, I can't see the deck at this point. So that may well be me and my lack of smarts, but if you can help me with that, that would be great. Trish and I have been doing, thank you so much. Trish and I have been doing a lot of work in the background, talking about and trying to make this as conversational as we can. And while the short courses, blended learning and reskilling of adult learners is the ongoing basis for this conversation and the response to COVID-19, it became very clear, particularly in the work that she and I have been doing recently, that the concept of a strong signature experience is particularly important in helping institutions through this arc that we've been on since early January, February. What I've noticed is that universities, the institutions, the businesses that have been most successful have had a very strong sense of signature. And that signature has helped them navigate the new normal. And you had a different term for that the other day, Trish. You said it wasn't the new normal.
It's the next normal for us.
Yeah. It's a good point. And I think we also talked about the innovation and the partnership, which is really important. I was speaking to some colleagues. I did some recent work where I did a snapshot pulse survey of the first 100 days of COVID with one of the companies I was consulting to. And one of the points that came out from someone I've known for years was universities will remember those who stood with us and those who didn't. And I think that's a really important piece. This isn't the time for innovation and partnership, true innovation and partnership, to be kind of broken down by how we're going to meet expanding and contracting FTE numbers. What are we going to do around, sucking up additional storage? This is a time when we really need to just all roll our sleeves up together. And I hope that through today's chat, we tease some of those pieces out. The back end of the fireside chat in particular is where we're going to think about innovation and partnership. And Trish, I really want you to share all of your thoughts at that point. So the new normal, as we've said, has been a pretty confronting experience. That shot you can see there is actually the White Pass going up with the Yukon. And that particular railway bridge, quite famous, but it's a metaphor really for where we are today. That bridge had been in place for a long, long time. It had been the main artery for everyone trying to get from Skagway up to the Yukon and pan for some gold. However, like all things, eventually it broke, and that shot that I took there was from a new rail. It was a new line, and it's important that we keep thinking about the way in which we need to reposition and reinvest and think about different ways of approaching online. And Trish and I were talking about, in my mind, the difference between online and remote learning. We are now remote. We're not online getting out and doing all the things that we would normally do. There is certainly a remoteness to what we do, and learning is normally a very interactive, socially connected endeavour. Trish, how are you seeing some of the challenges that are being addressed by VU in terms of wellness for students and academics?
Look, this has been an incredibly interesting year, and I think it's been interesting is one word. It's been turbulent, but it's also been exhilarating. You know, that we've actually managed to accelerate a number of things that we've been nudging along for years. You know, we've been trying to get some of these changes through, and we've managed at VU to do some of that with the block model. But our experience at the moment with what has happened, you know, we felt we were being successful. We were getting great student results with the introduction of the block model, which I'll talk about soon. And then this happened. Well, first of all, we had the bushfires here in Victoria. So it's been, you know, one hell of a year, hasn't it? So we had the bushfires that impacted on a lot of people and deterred a lot of our international students as well. And then the virus has swept through, and we were pretty smug, I think, in terms of how we thought we were, you know, doing pretty well there. And now look at what's happening in Victoria. We are right back in lockdown again. So whilst we're trying to plan for re-emergence from the first lockdown, we're now back with our plan A. And that's tough. That's tough on staff, and it's tough on students. Some of my staff have got kids at home. One has got 4 teenagers all studying critical exams, and a wife who's trying to teach school from home. So trying to manage that, as well as having, you know, productive and constructive conversations about how we keep moving forward, can often be a challenge. So my view is that we need to make space. We need to make space for people to do what they can within the confines or restrictions that they are finding themselves in.
Yeah, no, thank you. I think the third piece to this, we talk about understanding that change to the new reality, the new normal. We have a renewed focus on wellness for all of our stakeholders in our communities, and that's really front and centre. And when I was talking to all those academic leaders, it was interesting to hear just how front and centre that thinking was. One executive director I was speaking to talked about a 400% increase in their applications for ad hoc online teaching positions. That was really overnight. It was a massive change in terms of the dynamics of their business. And that same person made an interesting comment, because we're talking about the challenges that then come to students, for instance, when they're trying to navigate in a new environment. And she made some really great comments. She said assessment and integrity flourishes when student support functions flourish, and when teaching and teachers flourish. And I think that is something we can't really take our eyes off with all of the challenges that are occurring. Everybody did flip the switch. And I know, to use a term, there was some madcap movement. But in the main, the whole sector, nationally and internationally, flicked a switch and went to remote in literally 2 weeks. Now, we can say that some components of that weren't optimal, but the basic components that needed to be in place were in place. I think taking that a step further, those institutions that had already given a lot of thought to the way in which they used technology to enable their signature experience and really thought about what that signature experience is, were really important, and they've done well. Clayton Christensen uses the term job to be done, and it's really understanding why customers hire the services or the tools that vendors, producers bring to the table. In the university space, those institutions have really had a good think about that and thought about the way in which technology can support everything from face-to-face through to online to now remote, I think has been quite instructive. So as we think about signature experiences, Trish, I think this is something that VU has really done a lot of thinking about. Could you walk us through a little bit of the transforming vision of the signature experience that VU's come to? Because when we talk about an architected student experience, that architected experience is really built on 4 components. You have to start with the transforming vision. What's the problem? What's the wicked problem you're trying to solve? Understanding the learner journey, where you can innovate and transfer that innovation to your business as usual. And that's something that has really occurred from your first year expansion of your signature experience. And then the way in which those educational partnerships, those EdTech partnerships, underpin that. So maybe if you could just start by speaking to the transforming vision.
Our transforming vision has been in train probably for about 4 years, and we were addressing a number of issues that were confronting the university around things like student success and student retention, things that are confronting a lot of other universities as well. But we needed to find a solution, and we needed to find a solution that was designed intentionally for the students who we had. I think one of the things that Vincent Tinto has said is that student success cannot be left to chance. It's something that has to be intentionally designed. So we followed a lot of the researchers who have been researching first year experience, student learning experience, like Tinto, Kuh, Sally Kift, Kerry Lee Krause. So we had been reading a lot about what other universities were doing, but we still weren't quite there in terms of how we ship things up to develop like our first year college. So we put in place a first year college where all students would actually start together with an interdisciplinary focus across the college. And then we discovered a model which was called the block model, and that is a model that's been used in Colorado College and in Quest University in Canada. And what that does is it actually completely disrupts the traditional model of university teaching, where students do 4 units at a time across 12 weeks or 16 weeks. They do, four units, then they go into SWAT fac, then they do exams, and then they do it all over again for the next semester. So what this model does is we actually look at students taking 1 unit at a time over 4 weeks. And the focus of that is not so much on the time or the construct of the timetable. It's about what happens during those 4 weeks and ensuring that students are engaged, connected, feeling that they are seen by their academic, and that things are structured in such a way that scaffolds learning and enables them to focus on the learning and what the outcomes of that are. So we designed what's now called the VU Way, and it's focused on flexible and engaged learning. And what we do is we're hoping to turn out students who are work ready, tech ready, and life ready. So to do that means that our units and the content of what we're teaching has got to be authentic, it's got to be future focused, and it's got to be real world experiences for students. So that's what we did. We intentionally designed initially for our first year students to try and get them into the university and to succeed and not drop out or feel that they can't do it because they didn't have the educational or the cultural capital to succeed. So we rolled it out first in first year, and we were absolutely blown away by the success. The students loved it, they stayed, and they succeeded. So, then we're thinking, okay, so second year, what do we do? Do we throw them back into the 4 at a time? And students overwhelmingly told us that they wanted to continue with it. And we've now just finished rolling it out to our third year, and we're due to have our first group of students graduating from that this year. And we're also now planning to roll it out in postgrad next year. So that's sort of a snapshot as to what it looks like. And some people may have heard of it and some people may not.
Yeah, well, I've got a slide, and thank you for that, the content for it subsequently that actually delves into it a bit more. But there's a couple of connections there that you made. I think the work that Sally and Marsha have been doing in the region has actually been quite transformative. And if anyone has the opportunity, go back and have a look at the STARS conference. Go to that website. There's some fantastic work that has come out of that conference over the years. I had the pleasure of getting along to one a few years ago, and I have to say that the focus on student success at that point was quite new, but that has continued to be a real wellspring of fantastic information and great practice and sharing of good practice and world-class practice as well. I've just thrown up a couple of thoughts there around universities that have, or online entities that have built strong signature brands in a couple of different ways. And we'll dive into the block unit a little bit more with Vic shortly. But if we think about Deakin, for instance, with its smart and cloud campus and the way in which technology underpins that particular offering, and the ability to then wrap around their credentialing model and all the micro awards, micro credentials that are now bubbling up through their business model and the work they've been doing through Deakin Co and previously Deakin Prime. Western Sydney have done an enormous amount of work to rebrand and rethink the way in which they work with their students. I had the pleasure of meeting with one of the DVCs before everything got shut down, and I was speaking with Simon. We were just walking from one floor to another, and what really struck me was the accessibility that students had to pretty much anybody in the place. Simon was just walking up the stairs, and he picked out two students that he had known and spoke to them on the fly about a couple of things, and there was this immediacy in terms of that experience. I think when you have a look at the way in which Western Sydney has redeveloped its presence online and the way that it's built that connected campus at Parramatta, some really strong signature statements there. And then RMIT Online, of course, when Martin wanted to start developing out a more robust and, I guess, specific online set of offerings, he had specific global taillights, as he called them, that he was pursuing. RMIT now has taken a very rapid to market, highly a very agile approach to how they identify courses, skill segments, and then co-develop those and co-author those with industry to roll them out quickly. So I just wanted to call out a couple of interesting signature experiences there that kind of underpin the way in which technology intelligently used as it serves the greater transformational vision and the understanding of the learner journey and where technology can provide affordances is a really important, they're important kind of lighthouses to how institutions have moved fairly seamlessly. Yes, there's been a lot of rushes towards e-proctoring companies, and I'm sure I should have maybe bought some shares in e-proctoring companies. A couple of years ago, I probably wouldn't have taken this job. I'd be feet up somewhere. But I think it's important for us to have a think about the way in which innovation and partnership has underpinned the use case, particularly with VU. So we'll just park the others for a moment. And you and I talked about these pieces the other night. We talked about was a reimagined student success model, but you also talked about the risks that you felt COVID could present, and what were the outcomes. So Trish, I might just throw back to you just to walk us through that innovation and the way, and we'll finish with the partnership at the back end on the next slide. But if you could just walk through maybe the risk that COVID brought, but the way in which you were able to fairly elegantly switch.
I think we were quite surprised with how seamless it was for us to actually flick the switch and move into the COVID era or the remote era. We already had our units were already carefully designed using a very sophisticated digital platform. So as part of the block, the students had a digital learning space that was integrated into the classroom. So everything was digital in the classroom, in face-to-face, but the focus wasn't on the digital. The focus was on the connection and the underpinning resources that were available for students to navigate through at their own time. So for us, we initially thought, oh no, just when we get it right and we've got the block and everything's going so well, then this happens. But we were absolutely surprised at how easily we actually transitioned over, because the only thing that changed was the lens between the academics and the students. It was that interface. So we went through what we called the Zoom boom, and we had every resource targeted at getting academics to learn how to use Zoom, and not just transmit through Zoom, but to engage students through Zoom. So students can still log into their digital learning space, which we use as Brightspace, which has all been blueprinted. There's lesson plans, there are activities, there's pre-class activities, during class activities, and post-class activities for every student in every class. So they could continue to engage with that, but where they actually saw their academic or their learning leader was in Zoom, in a virtual space. Now, trying to just shift that around slightly and say, you don't do face-to-face for 3 hours, which we hadn't been doing in the classroom, but there was a sense that we need to keep connected, or, see students, and students needed to have cameras on. So trying to say that's not important, making sure we know students are okay, we know they're engaged, give them activities, track activities, and seek feedback, continuously check in and encourage them to check in on each other. So it actually happened quite seamlessly. And a number of our students probably have 2, often 3 jobs, have care responsibilities. So it was a challenge often for them to come to campus. So they may have missed out some sessions. Whereas now a lot of students don't have any work. So they're at home with very little to focus on. So the participation, the engagement, and the results have just gone through the roof for all of the blocks. I've spoken to a number of students, before we went back into lockdown, talking to students who were, running tables in the local restaurant, and how's it going for you at this other university? And they would say, watching 4 academics at a time with their trainer wheels on for Zoom is really difficult because they haven't got a clue. So for our students to only have to navigate and engage with 1 academic at a time and 1 set of learning materials at a time was a benefit. Who knew? That's not what we designed it for, but it worked.
Yeah, and I think Charlotte has just posted a question: how has innovation as a result of COVID-19 created a more equitable online education offer that encompasses all students' needs? And I think you've actually, obviously you have some predictive powers here, because I think your answer just very nicely speaks to that. We're just coming up to the end of the session now. We've got a couple of minutes to go, and I just wanted to finish on just a couple of things, and we'll continue just to maybe close off a couple of questions at the back end. But we talked about the way in which we need to think about innovation becoming part of business as usual. And you alluded to that earlier, or spoke a little bit to that earlier, when you described the way in which your first year approach to Block has started to expand. I think one of the things that I found really interesting when we talked the other day was the way in which that program integrity was maintained. Someone's just saying they can't hear me. Michelle, you can't hear me? I'm not sure if that's still the case. Can you hear me, Trish?
I can hear you, Tony. Yep. I wasn't sure if anybody else was still here, because I did see a couple of things in the chat where people had been locked out.
Yeah, we'll keep going.
But there's some good comments there by people who are doing Block, so that's great to know that people are trialing it, because we did have a number of people who contacted us the week before lockdown and says, we're thinking of going to Block next week, can you help us? Doesn't quite happen like that.
I think talking about the way in which the signature experience is designed is important. Please reach out to both Trish and I after this if you've got any questions. But Trish, maybe if we could just finish with that question around program integrity, because a lot of universities have had to fundamentally rethink their approaches to assessment. That was one of the reasons why we all jumped towards e-proctoring, wasn't it? Because we had to think about the way in which we had to redesign assessment to give us the robustness so that we could still meet our outcomes goals. So maybe you could just speak to that.
Yeah, I think that our assessment was all intentionally designed anyway to be scaffolded and staged throughout a unit. So we didn't have these terminal assessments at every unit that was like a big essay or a big exam. We didn't go down the remote proctoring route at all. In fact, we've tried to get rid of exams completely. We've almost succeeded. We're almost there. The integrity part, looking at the authenticity of the assessment, if they are designed in such a way that either that they're group work or that there's something that a student has got to reflect on, present on, it's very, very difficult for someone to cheat or to get someone else to do it for them. So I think that we haven't got it 100% right, but we are quite confident that the students are engaged enough that they actually want to finish their assessment. They want to get the grade because of their learning experience, not because they're under so much pressure to get it done and get it submitted, which is often what's the catalyst for students cheating, because they're under so much pressure. Yes.
Yeah. No, thank you. I think if I can just then summarise before we get kicked out of the session, that agile innovation transfer to BAU is absolutely critical. I think the way in which platforms and solutions like Brightspace have enabled and empowered universities to move anywhere across that continuum. As you said, if you've got the right vision and planning in place, the way in which you deploy and utilise technology only supports success, no matter what the dynamic and fluid future is going to look like. And I think finally, I might just ask you to just reflect on the brand and reach, because you had indicated some interest from Dundee and Birmingham and others around what you've been doing. So this is also about now taking your work and reflecting that back out globally.
Yeah, we regularly have, when we were on campus, we regularly had people coming through. Can we come and check out the block? Because it makes sense. There are a number of universities in the UK and Scotland now who are also really interested in doing the block, and especially as they're coming out of their summer and into their new semester starting in September, there's a sense we have to do something different to enable students to succeed, because we don't know how long this is going to last. But apart from that, it does make sense. Who decided that we should do 4 units at a time and that students should have to juggle, so it's, we're continuing to discuss with people. There has been a block symposium run through Colorado College, so all of the universities who are using block mode have been having regular updates and engagement in terms of practices and experiences. And we're also currently writing a guide for TEXA on intensive modes of learning. So in that we'll have some, tips and tricks and things not to do.
Yeah. I think that last piece is really, really important, the way in which we can continue to be responsive to the compliance and regulatory pressures. At this point, I'm going to stop and thank you so much, Trish. I really appreciate your time and your support for this, and to everybody who's asked questions, and to my team who have been really fantastic in getting me up to speed. They put me on a push bike. I've been doing my laps quickly to get fit for this, but I had to stop 3 days ago, so I can't do that anymore without a mask. But it's been fantastic. If you've got any questions, please reach out to Trish and I. We would be delighted to speak to you in any shape or form, and connect you with anyone that would help. So thank you, everybody. Thank you, Trish. And
not a problem.
Everyone.
Take care, everyone. Thank you.